Hello and welcome back to Knowledge. Today we are going to be looking at spring blasters and how to modify them. So what is a spring blaster? Well, they can look something like this, with something you pull back here to prime the spring, and then you can put a dart in the front, or if there's a magazine, and then just pull the trigger and it will shoot. Now the important thing here is to understand how it works. Here is an example of this. In this diagram, we can see how a spring prime blaster works. So, there is a plunger tube looking something like this, and a plunger looking something like this, just with a rod sticking back it, so you can actually prime it. This will go through the plunger tube and sealing the plunger tube with a rubber ring around it to push air to the dart and fire it. The way it does this is having a spring press up behind the plunger head, so when it's pulled all the way back here, the spring catches here on something usually connected to the trigger, and this fires this straight through the tube and there onto the dart. Now, before it hits the dart, it has to go through something called an air restrictor. This is something which is found in base blasters. This means that the dart will not fire if it's not inserted properly, which means it has to push down on the certain pins, which will open an air gap and let the dart fire. This can be very ineffective. The reason for that is that it only lets some of the air out. So, one easy way to modify a blaster is therefore to remove this part here, letting all the air out. This means you can fire the blaster whenever, which means you have to be careful not to fire it when a dart is not inserted. Yes, because if it's not inserted properly, then the plunger tube will go and smash into the end of it way too quickly and might damage the blaster or destroy it. This is quite a simple thing to modify if you have the tools and you have a blaster which is easy to access. So what you can do is either remove this, which can cause a gain of maybe 10 feet per second flash performance, maybe 15 in some cases if you're lucky. This is due to the severe amount of air being blocked, making an increased time of the air going from the plunger head to the dart, which slows the rate of it going. In addition to this, you could also swap out the springs. This might not work on some, like for example the fire strike here. This is very difficult to do since you are not able to remove the plunger head without destroying the blaster. Therefore you might need to thread the spring on, which can be difficult, although for example in the fire strike I was able to do it. Something more easy to do access is something like here, the Rival Helios, where you can just open up and simply just insert a new spring and just take away the air restrictor instead of ripping it out, which can be the case with most blasters. There is some negatives and some positives with spring powered blasters. These can usually fire darts much harder than you would ever get a flywheel blaster to fire them. However, you have to prime them each time. And they cannot fire damaged darts, such as this one. If you flatten this out, would fire just fine out of a flywheel blaster, but due to the air pressure, it wouldn't fire out of a spring-powered blaster. On the other hand, spring-powered blasters can fire darts with any head type, if they're open, and even if they're in a magazine they can still fire most, compared to flywheel power blasters, which actually need them to be quite soft, the heads of the dart, because they need to compress them. Yes, thank you for following the introduction to spring blasters, and this is very easy to do, and I think most people can do it if you just have a screwdriver. So, a flywheel blaster guide will be coming up soon, and I'll see you in the next video.